Hello, my name is Philip Totaro. I'm the founder and CEO of market research firm IntelStor. Welcome to your weekly dose of truth to power. Truth to Power examines data driven insights for the energy sector with a focus on renewables. On this week's episode, we evaluate the market potential for renewable energy in Canada after their recent elections. Well, Canada has some new optimism for their renewable energy ambitions after the recent election there affirmed Mark Carney as prime minister. For those that don't know, Carney is a former central banker and was also part of Brookfield Asset Management. So it's safe to say that he knows how to attract capital. This comes at a time when the country is looking to improve its global standing and increase their sovereignty. One of Prime Minister Carney's first actions has been to investigate fast tracking approvals for energy projects. He's vowed to turn Canada into a quote, energy superpower, which sounds great. Many provincial premiers are jumping on this bandwagon. While this will mean an expansion of oil and gas alongside renewable energy, there are wind resource rich provinces that are also putting plans in place to prosper. Newfoundland and Labrador has centralized their energy permitting under a new department that will serve all forms of energy. The detailed technical potential is still being assessed, but preliminary analysis by IntelStor indicates that it's over 70 gigawatts. Meanwhile, Nova Scotia's premier, Tim Houston, revealed that they would license up to 40 gigawatts of offshore wind, which he claims would meet 27% of Canada's national demand. This is all coming at a time when the United States seems insistent on driving a significant amount of renewable energy investment away from that market. A big portion of the 75 billion that's been committed in the US for offshore wind is in jeopardy due to the hostility and the market uncertainty. Project developers and financiers have been looking for alternative markets to park that money, and Canada has emerged as an entirely viable alternative as they make themselves into an attractive investment destination. Canada's offshore renewable energy regulations came into force on December 16th, 2024. Based upon their current roadmap, they expect to start constructing offshore wind farms by 2032 and have them operational by 2035. The Nova Scotia Department of Energy, alongside Natural Resources Canada, has proposed 5 areas for the development of offshore wind farms. Nova Scotia's offshore wind sector is projected to be a $4.6 billion industry for them. As part of this, Nova Scotia set a goal of offering licenses for up to 5 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030, with the first call for bids later this year. And a joint venture between DP Energy and SBM Offshore wants to build a floating project in Nova Scotia as well. Nova East Wind has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq chiefs relating to the development, installation, and operation of a floating offshore wind project in the province. Now, Ontario still has a moratorium in place for offshore wind. Unfortunately, I'm not going to go into all the details behind that. Maybe we'll save that for another episode. But the good news is there's a recent report that came out that indicated the Great Lakes could have 150 gigawatts of fixed bottom and 415 gigawatts of floating offshore wind. Wind power in the Great Lakes could provide more than 100% of not only Ontario's total electricity needs, but they would have plenty left over to be able to export to the United States. And the development of either fixed bottom or floating offshore wind in Ontario could be done at a cost that's lower than that of the 4 nuclear plants that the province is currently building. Now, for those of you who fondly remember IntelStor's groundbreaking market analysis on the offshore wind sector in the United States back in 2015, we need to look at a number of other factors to see if Canada can be successful with their offshore wind market. Specifically, existing and planned port infrastructure improvements in the Atlantic, as well as the existing and planned supply chain build out across all the provinces, and lastly, electric grid development. So far, studies throughout Atlantic Canada remain ongoing, but Port Argentia has already been a marshalling point for monopiles destined for US based offshore projects dating back to 2013. Additional port infrastructure investments will likely exceed about 1 billion Canadian and include activities such as dredging for vessel draught, investment in new quayside crane capacity for marshalling turbine and foundation components. And while LM Wind Power's factory in Gaspé continues to recover from their quality issues, they still maintain a facility that would be capable of serving the Canadian market if demand for turbine ramps up. Additionally, Marmin has restarted their factory in Matane, Quebec, to serve the Peepaw Wind Energy Center. It's an onshore project. But this facility, along with the other one that Marmin has in Trois-Rivières, can also produce towers and potentially transition pieces for future offshore wind projects. Beyond that, there's a number of other investments that are necessary in supply chain development and port infrastructure improvement, but we're going to have to wait a little while longer for the market to kind of size itself based on the amount of infrastructure investment that the Canadian government wants to be able to capture here. In the meantime, grid development will also be required to integrate vast amounts of offshore wind into the Canadian grid. Currently, Canada has 13 different regional grids, which are highly interconnected and interdependent with the United States. The Canadian grid currently lacks sufficient interconnection between the provinces to adequately balance power across the whole country. A national HVDC interconnection has been proposed, but up until now, they haven't had the political will or the capital to make that happen. Now, given the Prime Minister's desire for infrastructure build out, this time it may actually happen. Based on what we've seen in our studies, it would cost around $24 billion to build. The challenge with that is that it could interfere with power sales to the United States if they actually went ahead with this. Canada currently generates more than $3 billion annually in power sales to the United States, and power producers aren't keen to lose that revenue. Canadian demand wouldn't necessarily offset all of those revenue losses, so even with a fully integrated and interconnected grid nationally, Canada still has a ways to go to be able to increase their demand. But having a national power grid would still give them options for where they could theoretically deploy additional power to the United States through the 125 different interconnections that they've got that go across the border. So, just like any country, there are still many things to be worked out to facilitate offshore wind project development and further renewable energy project development in Canada. But it seems that they now have the political will to do it and the appetite to attract the capital necessary to make it happen. Thank you for joining me this week. Again, I'm Philip Totaro, and this has been your weekly dose of truth to power. Follow us on IntelStor's YouTube channel as well as your favorite audio platforms. And visit www.intelstor.com to join more than 200,000 subscribers to our renewable energy data solutions. A full analysis of Canada or any offshore wind market globally is available to subscribers. And you can register today for the next Wind Summit event in Houston, Texas this October. Visit www.windsummit.org and join hundreds of your industry colleagues from companies such as NextEra, EDPR, EDF, Pattern Energy, Clearway, Apex Clean Energy, and more. We hope to see you there.